when it comes to government working with industry on these kinds of technology and security issues, we don't need to be just lowering barriers for the two sides to work together. We need to be dissolving the barriers entirely. As an example, last week, the Department of Homeland Security announced the creation of a new AI Security and Safety Board, which is going to be chaired by Secretary Mayorkas and has as private sector members people like Sam Altman of OpenAI, Satya Nadella of Microsoft, Sundar Pichai of Google, critical infrastructure operators like the CEOs of Occidental Petroleum and Delta Airlines, and leading lights from civil society, civil rights community. And this board is going to be getting together to address and solve the biggest challenges when it comes to ensuring the secure and safe deployment of artificial intelligence, because it's coming and it's going to have incredible benefits. It's going to cure cancer. It's going to make people's lives better in a lot of incredible ways, but we do want to have some guardrails in place to protect people.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here today for this important conversation. You know, rapid advancements in generative AI have caught the world by surprise. And I think we all agree it would have great benefits to our world, but it does come with great risks, particularly in the national security space. Malicious state and non-state actors already pose threats to American and world security and stability. AI can supercharge these threats, making a range of cyber and other attacks accessible to more bad guys. China, Iran, and Russia, they're all pouring billions into AI research and development. Now, you two are here with us today as the experts. So my first question is, how do you see the development of AI altering the national security space? And what do you see as the most critical application gaps as we prepare for strategic competition with regional and near-peer competitors? Nand.
Great. Well, thank you. Amazing topic. I've been in the tech industry for 30 plus years as an entrepreneur. Sold a bunch of companies in Silicon Valley now, and CTO of the Jake, and now CTO of agency. So in my career, I think there have been probably two other discontinuities that I can think of the size and scale of this is driving. And both on the sell side of technology and on the buy side of technology, we have to be right on top of it. At CIA, we are all in not only on AI from a use perspective, offensively, defensively for our own internal operations, but Director Burns, when he joined, made a giant pivot towards what we think of as technology as an intelligence target. And the core of that is the AI challenge. Now, to answer your question, the trick here is industry is doing its part in terms of driving the innovation. And literally every single week, we're seeing this, just the previous panel, Vinod was talking about closed versus open source, et cetera. I mean, that debate is not even a settled debate. We're right in the fog of war. And all these changes are happening. And on the national security side, we have to be incredibly good customers when it comes to tracking and being ready to absorb this technology. So from a procurement perspective, from an architecture perspective, from a systems perspective, being able to pull the best of this in while retaining optionality as we go through the commoditization curve that this tech is going through over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, we have to be right on top of it on the bleeding edge. I mean, for instance, we're public now, which is a rare thing for CIA to talk about. We have LLMs in production at the agency, and we're looking at transforming every single part of what the agency does, from operations to the analytic function, support functions, and other pieces there. So we don't think there's anything more important than this.
Right. Rob.
I think what we're going to see as AI develops further is a series of arms races, if you will. You're going to see all kinds of AI applications for offensive use, whether that be cyber offensive use, cyber attacks, traditional weaponry and missile systems, and the like. And then you're going to see incredible defensive use cases with AI too. And the jury is going to be out for a while as to who's winning, the offensive actors or the defensive actors. And it may be not uniform across the board, and it may not even be uniform moment to moment. I think the key is that the United States must maintain its competitive advantage in AI, both in government use cases at agencies like the CIA and DHS, obviously the Pentagon, our military, but also in the private sector, which is going to be developing so much of this foundational technology. And so we need to be focused when you talk about what are the gaps. China, Russia, Iran are pouring in billions, all true. So what are we doing to maintain that edge? A huge component of that is attracting the best AI and engineering talents to this country. We just have to be in a position where if there is talent up for grabs in this world, they are coming to the United States to work for us, whether our commercial sector or the government, as opposed to an adversary. So one thing that we've done at President Biden when he issued his foundational executive order on artificial intelligence security and safety late last year, he ordered us at the Homeland Security Department to streamline our visa process for high-skilled workers so that we can win that talent. And we have increased the number there's different visa categories, but between 30 and 55% across various high-skilled immigration categories so that we can be winning this incredibly important competition for talent, which in turn is going to be what develops the most sophisticated AI use cases, including for national security.
After the Gulf War, Chinese strategists believed that information dominance represented an advantage. So the U.S. surveyed the battlefield, we made quick, precise decisions, and now we have further improved our targeting ability by incorporating AI. So how have you two seen China preparing for the next conflict differently than they have prepared in the past? And how is the U.S. preparing for and responding to these threats? Rob?
Well, we've been very vocal in recent months about what we see as China preparing the digital battlefield. There's a Chinese cyber threat group that we call Volt Typhoon that is essentially pre-positioning across critical infrastructure in the United States in a way that suggests it's not for intelligence gathering, it's not for traditional espionage. The Chinese have done that for a long time, so have we, so have the Russians. But they're infiltrating various critical infrastructure operators around the country where there really wouldn't be any intelligence value for them. It really leads only to the conclusion that they're pre-positioning to do something disruptive.
That's right.
In the event of an outbreak of hostilities. And so we have been very loud and out in front with our companies here in the United States about what we're seeing, what these Chinese threat actors are doing, and how to successfully defend against it, though that is challenging to do. And so that's a key part of it. The other thing we need to do to prepare is, we've seen in these major geopolitical events, like Russia's invasion of Ukraine a couple of years ago, have these massively disruptive spillover effects on supply chains, on transportation networks, and the like. Every company needs to be preparing for a Taiwan scenario.
Yeah.
They need to expect that something is going to happen and think 3 shots, 4 shots, 5 shots ahead about how that is going to impact their business and what they would do to make sure that they can keep resilient and operating. And every government agency has to do that as well and will, but truly the impacts of something like that would be felt across the public sector, of course, but the private sector too.
Nand?
When you think of the Gulf War lessons versus, I think, what the lessons are going to be from what comes next, that was an insanely hardware-focused war that was enabled by software. This one is going to be primarily a software war that is powered by something like AI, where the hardware itself, I call this the idea of software-defined warfare, right? We saw this in sort of the technology industry, how we basically moved out of the agility of hardware. It's slow, it's expensive, it depreciates. The idea is the game's all going to be on software, and the turbocharging of software with this AI stuff creates the weaponization that will bring scale. And I think the Chinese understand this because, in some sense, our design point for our military and functions have been a hardware-centric design point. And in many cases, this is what we call the bypass copper model, which is you just bypass our case, we're the adversaries model of warfare and just go to a completely digital-centric version of it. So the cyber stuff that they do, which is at scale and incredibly good, other things. Now, here's where the game gets interesting, is to add to something what Robert said and the theme here, others said. I actually say two things when I talk about this competition with China. Number one, we have to stop using the word race when it comes to the fight with them, because that implies that there is a distinct endpoint. There is a gold medal winner and somebody goes home with not the gold. This is an infinite race. This is not going to stop. It's going to keep on going. And given that this is a digital fight, it's not a zero-sum game. So what they get versus what we get, in terms of, there was a discussion of open sourcing this IP. That's exactly right, which is every time we give, it creates a multiplier effect that everyone gets. Now, on their side, what we're finding, obviously, it's open source reporting on this and known is the Chinese themselves are now taking a lot, but giving very back in this market. So, for instance, just the breakthroughs that gave us these LLM breakthroughs and everything was an open source paper that we wrote and just gave the IP away. Controlling the model, stuff like that, I think will only get us so far. The trick right now is for us to get on our running shoes and keep running as fast as possible and changing the game across every single, and it's not only AI, stick AI in front of any emerging tech market, biotech, space technology, quantum, telco. Once you add AI in front of it, that literally turbocharges, changes the game. And we have to be just fighting across every single one of these emerging tech areas across the board with these folks, and it's going to keep on going.
I think that's an interesting challenge for government, because government historically works in a very kind of slow, concrete manner.
That's right.
With the idea of let's do this procurement, here's our RFP, and now we're done. And what you're describing is incredibly different. So I think the implication for government is really interesting there, that as members of Congress, we may need to think differently about the way that we're thinking, not just about appropriations and funding, but also enabling legislation that allows us to continue moving at that pace, rather than thinking in this kind of short-term, achieve the goal, we're done way. Interesting.
Yeah, the architectural shift, when I was at DOD and now at CIA, one of the key things that we are working on internally is how do you actually fundamentally change the architecture, your digital architecture, to be able to do this stuff at scale. The model that we see in every enterprise that I used to sell to for 25 years of startups and now looking at our own architecture tends to be a siloed architecture.
Yes.
You have problem A, you apply money B against it and solve it. So you end up with 79 different disparate systems, all isolated, don't work. Refactoring that entire architecture, your data architecture, your application architecture, your agility, and this is the Ukraine war lesson.
Yeah.
The organization and the military and the government that can sling code the fastest and close arbitrage opportunities when the fighting starts, that is going to be the winning military. That's going to be the winning intelligence organization, the winning government. However, we have what's called a mark-to-market problem.
Right.
Which is we don't go to war every day. We go to war, hopefully, never go to war. But when we go to war, it's marked over a decade, 2 decade, 3 long decade period. And so the efficacy of what you've built and understanding your effectiveness against the competition never gets marked quickly.
Right.
And so we're going to find out a lot should this ever happen, and hopefully it doesn't. We will find out a lot about the capabilities that sort of match each other at the point of contact. And I think the question is, how do we iterate fast?
Right.
There's actually a really powerful lesson from Ukraine, which is at the outset of when it was clear that Russian forces were about to invade, Ukraine's government made a very wise decision to immediately move huge amounts of its IT infrastructure onto the cloud outside of Ukrainian territory. They brought in Western cybersecurity companies. They brought in Western and allied government cyber agencies to help them prepare. And while the conflict overall has obviously been hugely grinding and painful, when it comes to digital defense, sort of defense against Russia's digital assault on Ukraine, Ukraine has been able to defend itself far better than anyone anticipated. In fact, to the point now where if Russia wants to take out parts of the electric grid, it launches in a missile into Ukraine. It does not typically try a cyber attack at this point, and missiles are expensive and scarce for them. And so it does show that with preparedness, defense matters, resilience matters, and you can make your country a lot safer and more secure against these kinds of threats. But it takes the foresight and the hard work to do what Nand is saying.
No, and I want to go back to what you were saying just a moment ago about the 79 different silos. And this is very common in government, right? So, we contract with someone and they build one thing.
Yep.
And it works for this one thing for a few years.
That's exactly.
But it doesn't communicate. It doesn't transfer. It's not growth oriented.
We stick a human being in front to do swivel chair integration
right. So
across the keyboards.
The AI models in Silicon Valley are ahead of competing nations. But the cooperation and application of these models within our defense and homeland security efforts is not where it needs to be. So what do you two suggest about the work that we should do in government over the next 3 years to maintain our competitive edge? What changes do we make in government to create this partnership that allows us to become nimble, cross-communicating, and able to move forward?
I'll take a shot on. We have a process going on at CIA right now focused on exactly solving that problem. It requires a lot of what I call sewer and plumbing work. It's not glamorous work. It's incredibly hard work to arc towards an architecture that allows you to get there. So Kai-Fu Lee's book, right, AI Superpowers.
Yeah.
What was his core distinction between what the Chinese do versus what we do? We do an incredible job at invention, but our adoption is slower. And it's precisely because of those. And the Chinese are really good fast followers. They're really good at taking stuff that's moving down the commoditization curve to a point of maturity, and they're awesome at scaling. However, they're lucky because in many cases they have greenfield IT infrastructure and enterprise systems that are not as complicated as ours. We've digitized so early that we've now grown that.
Yeah.
The tried answer I can give you is it takes dedicated hard work from an internal technology perspective, from an architecture perspective. And architecture is a key word we use in Silicon Valley to build scale and drive down costs and make things fast. And the question is getting great architectures, being able to do that work from a discipline perspective internally, doing great design around products, something that we don't think about in government as much,
right? Which
is great user-centric design, because
we actually do the opposite.
Yeah, I don't know if we do it purposely to piss off our users, but the question is that we need to actually spend the dedicated work that we do and take those lessons from the Valley in terms of how to build great products with great design, user journeys. These are all things that we're actually starting to do at scale at the agency. So we're doing at least our part, driven by the pressure to get this type of AI integrated in and what we call sort of invert the model of applications and insights, which go from today when you look at IT systems and things that we do internally, it's very much of what we call a pull model. I as a user, I as an intelligence officer, I as a military officer am pulling data out of systems. It almost sounds painful, where I'm painfully pulling information. It's extractive.
Yeah.
What you want is IT systems and technology systems to be pushing new insights.
Yeah.
And that's really the game-changing things we need to be arcing over for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, we are jumping very aggressively at the Homeland Security Department into piloting use cases for AI technology so we can do our jobs better. So we are using AI to better detect shipments of fentanyl. We are using AI to enhance customer service. We're looking at how AI can enhance the passenger screening process at airports with TSA. We're really confident that this technology can be transformative and make the American people be much more secure and have much more streamlined experiences with the range of agencies at our department. You know, to your question, Senator, on what can we do as policymakers, as legislators, to create the right conditions to use this technology well, I mean, there's a few things. I mean, one, we absolutely need government procurement reform. It is not it is not an agile enough process.
It's horrible.
System wide, it is horrible, and we can and should do better. We also need to think about, to the question of competitive edge, how can we make decisions that keep the United States ahead of adversaries? So, for example, we have been really strong on limiting the export of the highest end computer chips to countries like China to keep their AI development that might have military applications and intelligence applications behind ours. It's been a successful strategy, but we need lots more creative thinking like that. We also need to be thoughtful about what we do in an area that might seem unrelated to national security might have unintended security impacts, and be thoughtful about that. So when you talk about competition policy and tech and things like that, part of the discussion deserves to be, well, what are the implications of those kinds of decisions when it comes to having very strong AI development and collateral technology development here in the United States versus somewhere else? And so I think, all of this is nuanced, but I think we do have the right group of people across our agencies and Congress to take these on. And I think we actually have developed, for all the difficulty in our political system, and there is a lot, the United States is ahead in AI right now.
Yeah. That actually leads to my last question. Right now, private AI companies are fighting each other to surpass each other literally on a monthly basis, right? The development is moving so quickly. So first part of the question is, how can government cooperate with these companies who are in a never-ending race with each other for the development? How does the U.S. government cooperate with them so that we're taking advantage and getting access to that development on a nearly daily basis? And then the second thing is kind of going back to what you were mentioning earlier, Nand, which is this iteration cycle. How do we adjust to maintaining an innovation cycle within government that matches what's happening in the private market and allows us to be nimble and moving forward quickly? So, Rob, how about you take that, and then Nand, we'll have you close out.
We need, when it comes to government working with industry on these kinds of technology and security issues, we don't need to be just lowering barriers for the two sides to work together. We need to be dissolving the barriers entirely. As an example, last week, the Department of Homeland Security announced the creation of a new AI Security and Safety Board, which is going to be chaired by Secretary Mayorkas and has as private sector members people like Sam Altman of OpenAI, Satya Nadella of Microsoft, Sundar Pichai of Google, critical infrastructure operators like the CEOs of Occidental Petroleum and Delta Airlines, and leading lights from civil society, civil rights community. And this board is going to be getting together to address and solve the biggest challenges when it comes to ensuring the secure and safe deployment of artificial intelligence, because it's coming and it's going to have incredible benefits. It's going to cure cancer. It's going to make people's lives better in a lot of incredible ways, but we do want to have some guardrails in place to protect people. And it's only through these kinds of government and industry joint efforts, truly joint, not listening to industry and then we go and make our decision back there. It has to be truly joint thinking and outcomes. That's how we're going to accomplish it.
Obviously I'm going to stay away from any policy pieces there. CIA, we just try to stay in the back and support, obviously, policymakers like yourself. But speaking generically about how to think about the role of the U.S. government writ large in sort of technology innovation. So I have kind of a 3-stage funnel that I've built over the past 30 years in terms of how tech innovation happens, right? You've got big R, which is research, right? The core fundamental research. You've got little d, which is basically the land of startups and venture capital, and then big D, which is a scaled public companies, right? So there's an arc that goes from big R all the way to big D. We as a country systemically have built an insanely great pipeline over decades of making great investments at every stage in the pipeline. government's role has been most effective in the front end of the funnel, the big R side, which is where research dollars basically have been very effective in creating the fountain that has actually pushed stuff from left to right. Now, the role of government in startup and venture capital community or in public markets, et cetera, can be debated, but it's unequivocal that the work that the government has done in terms of enabling fundamental research has to continue. There was a dean of engineering that we met with and who talked about the fact, for instance, that a large, well-funded university simply does not have the compute power now to do what private industry does. And that, I think, is something that I know, government is thinking about doing that. But these are examples of where doing that fundamental investment still will pay off in a big way. Government's role in this game, in terms of AI right now, we're actually having no problems getting access to pretty much everything there is cutting edge. So this idea of Silicon Valley and government, not, at least my experience has been both at the DoD, with the Jake and Project Maven and other pieces, and then beyond here at CIA, we have access to everything. And we've actually gotten really smart about moving stuff from the low side to the high side, getting these models tested out. We basically, what do we call, retain optionality, because this stuff is changing so fast. The architectural edict to the application teams is don't lock in early on any of this stuff, because 2 weeks from now is going to be another code drop that basically changes it. So really the imagination is now really on our side, has to be, how are we rethinking? So like our DA is listening, leaning in on, how do we rethink the analytic function for CIA? And the way I view it is you're going to have 20, 30, 40, 50, even 200% improvements in the short arc, while simultaneously we're thinking through what does the 5 and 10-year arc look like? And we're doing that across. The DO, for instance, we talk about UTS, which is basically something that's really, really killing us out in the field in terms of competitively, biometrics, video cameras. Well, how do we turn it around where from an offensive or continuing those operations in the face of this much AI being thrown at us is another big area that they're looking at. So, directorate by directorate, we're rethinking, kind of reshaping every part of what the CIA needs to do in the face of using it and deploying it.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I think a couple key takeaways from our time together today is, of course, making sure that government is doing what it takes to bring the best and brightest minds, partnering with the greatest private industry actors out there on AI. And then perhaps the biggest challenge for us from a government perspective is to adjust our own structures so we have the nimbleness to be prepared for this long-term race with no finish. Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Hey everyone, Eric here. At Turpentine, we're building the first media outlet for tech people by tech people. We're the network behind the show you're listening to right now. We have a slate of hit shows across a range of topics and industries, from our AI and investing cluster of podcasts to shows that drive the conversation in tech with the most interesting thinkers, founders, investors, and influencers, like Econ 102 with Noah Smith. We're launching new shows every week, and we're looking for industry-leading sponsors. If you think that might be you and your company, email me at ericaturpentine.co. That's ERIK at turpentine.co, and let's partner together.